Hey guys, this is Milo here to do another how-to video. Today what we're doing is actually installing JDM mirrors, at least today true JDM mirrors on Datsun S30. I think we've got a 72 S30 as a donor car for today. So when we were on the Z Crazies tour in 2017, I decided to try to pick up some true JDM mirrors while we were there. I got together with Datsun from Ultimate Z Garage, and he was nice enough to provide me a set, brand new from Nissan when they were still making them. I think since then they began to start making those again. So we're going to show you the kits. I'm going to show you what you need to do the install, some techs, some little tips and tricks on how to get it done. So let's go into it. So what we're working with today is basically our true JDM kit. So when I say true JDM, we've got this is everything that will come with that assembly that you purchase from Nissan. We've got our left-hand side, and we've got our right-hand side. Now this is basically everything that you will get with a traditional kit. Now for those that know, this is obviously the box that they come in, and these are the two part numbers that we found are the units that we were looking for. Again, this is what we picked up. These are brand new, never been installed, and this is everything that we thought we would need. Now, we're going to get into an argument here about placement. Now, in America, we've got the left-hand drive positioning for, obviously, for JDM mirrors. So we've got a bit of a conundrum here, and honestly, an endless battle that's been going on in the forums forever. This was a diagram that was provided from somebody on one of the forums. Whoever did it, thank you again for taking the time to get this done. Very good work. Me personally, I ended up utilizing a more symmetrical measurement, so I actually didn't follow this. I actually took the measurements, split the difference, and went symmetrical on the assembly that we're doing for this vehicle today. I actually converted everything also from centimeters over to millimeters just to make things a little more precise and get specifics on what I wanted to do for the install. Now, again, I'm doing a symmetrical install. Now let's talk a little bit about what you're going to need to kind of get this done. I used a whole bevy of tape. I wanted to make sure that I could draw on the diagram, considering this is the first time I was doing it. I obviously picked up a few Sharpies, things like that, just to make my life a little easier. And I went ahead and got a whole bevy of drill bits. I am specific on a few of these, but again, I kind of started off with step holes as I began to kind of do my basic installs. So what we're going to do is just kind of work with these for our entry level or starting positions, and then we'll work on from there. I personally work with a rigid. You can kind of use whatever you like. That's just kind of my preference. Now, let's talk about how these are going to get installed onto this. So, working with what we've got here, we wanted to make sure our measurements were true. So, which means we measured a bunch of times, and then also pulled what the pulled off the symmetrical marks and then laid everything out. So, let's talk about how we get our first two measurements. From the fender, we went ahead and measured from here to this imaginary line that's going to run from here to the bucket. All right, this was actually 190 millimeters. All right, and I know it says cm, but we're talking millimeters. So 190 millimeters from this line to this fender, true all the way through. All right, and then from there, we wanted to measure 275 millimeters from the center line of this hole to the bucket edge. All right, that actually gave me the perfect dimension or perfect location of where I wanted to start my initial drill. All right, so we actually made it symmetrical from here to symmetrical to over there. So let's talk about how we, after we've got our measurement, how we're going to get our center punch. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to get to this point by starting with our drill bits. So you can use a punch if you want to get really fancy with it, or you can just kind of work your way up with a small guide hole and then work your way up from there and then kind of go from there. So eventually we're going to be working up to what is known as a step bit. Now this step bit is the one I just utilized, a little cheapy Chinese one, but it seemed to work for what I needed it for. Now diameters are are very specific for a reason. And we're going to go ahead and go into that right now. All right. So again, this is the left-hand side. We went and did a little bit differently on this one. A little more detail for specifics. So I started off with this hole first. Again, step, step, step to get to a larger diameter. And then I began to work with my step bit. Now from here, I went ahead and got to this piece, got to this diameter, which was 11/16. This is very, very good as far as a fit. I thought it was almost perfect. If you run into any troubles, you can go ahead and step up with the Dremel and just try to get it just wherever you want, but again, to get it damn near perfect. Now, the next hole that we went ahead and measured up was the 3/16 hole. It's a little tough if you don't create something like a template. Now, this is actually a template that I created for myself. And I started off with this hole back here. So what I did is I actually utilized this, and I actually cut this just out of the box on the Nissan thing. So what we did here is we actually took the outlay of this piece, right? And then we actually made ourselves a template. So let's talk a little bit how we got here. All right. So here was our template, and here was our guide hole. So this little hole is what we would set this up for. Now the reason why we did this very specifically to the holes is because we wanted the tightest fit that we can possibly get here. I've seen guys with mirrors and they kind of just bore everything out, and the whole mirror assembly kind of shakes and wobbles, or you know, these cars have a lot of vibration if you've got things that are going out, and it was just annoying the hell out of me. So I wanted to make sure that I was very specific on my hole diameters. So let's talk a little bit about that. Again, 11/16 hole, 3/16 hole specifically for that guide bit. And then this was the other hole. This is a 15x64 hole. I plan on running a 10mm to basically tighten down the assembly, and I'll show you in just a minute what I'm talking about. So I ran a 10mm, which is a traditional 15x16 hole, and that's what I utilized to kind of get my job done. Again, all I did is created a diagram out of that, and then I basically just kind of followed it and punched it through. Now, let's talk a little bit, now that we've got our holes done on this side, let's talk about how it's going to fit up and how the basic layout is. So, we've got our assembly, our mirror, our piece that's going to go on the underside, and then we've got our gasket that's kind of going to fit between them. Now, a word on the bases. These bases are side specific. What I mean by that is they kind of go traditionally only one way. So this little guide that we made right there was for this guy. So that will fit through here, and that hole will fit through the base of this lower fixture. And then right here you have your choice. You can either go with like a screw on the top side of the fender and then put your gasket over it like this, or you can get super fancy and drill through the actual gasket, seal this assembly, and then you've got a little bit of a tighter assembly. I'll leave it up to you, whichever you prefer to do with that. Let's talk a little bit about how this is going to look. All right, so again, left-hand side nipple. It's going to fit on the underside right there. All right, and then this unit will come like this, fit there, and go from there. Now again, this hole right here is for this assembly. Now you can use, it doesn't come with any hardware from the kit, but you can utilize a traditional 10mm bolt and then start your assembly from there. So let's talk a little bit about anti-theft measurements. So these are obviously not cheap mirrors, and there's a bit of a wait period. So the last thing you want done is some other just guy coming and snagging your stuff. So let's talk a little bit about anti-theft measurements. So this is a traditional 10mm bolt, 10mm nut, right? I had these all CAD plated, courtesy of EP Racing, by the way. So if you get a chance to need anything coated or CAD plated from them, they are great guys to get that done. So we went ahead and you can do this assembly. And this basically just kind of gets you done. If you really want to get that finished like that, you can use a screw if you really want to get fancy with it. I'll leave it up to you. But a word of caution is, this is a pretty simplistic setup here, which means anybody can kind of come and just snag it from you. You can double nut it if you really want to get fancy with it. Me personally, I would take some anti-theft measurements and just try to find something a little fancy online, something that somebody wouldn't have a normal key to. Just me personally, just a word of advice. Other than that, that's everything that we need to kind of install this kit. Just so we can kind of go from, give you an idea of what we're talking about. Again, this is our kit, installing in the hole. Boom, fits like a glove, and then that assembly will go in there, and boom, we've got our install, and that's really it. Pretty simplistic. I know it's a really simplistic install, but I wanted to kind of show what was kind of left out for a lot of people. I found that a lot of guys were just oversimplifying things, kind of telling people to go search, but there just wasn't a whole lot of great how-tos on how to get this done. So I figured I would create something, try to let you guys decide for yourself what you wanted to do. Again, this is a symmetrical setup. If you want the true left-hand drive, just take your time, measure it out, figure out what you want to do. Other than that, that's everything. We'll see you guys for some more how-to videos in the future. Until then, talk to you later. Bye.